music was always part of my upbringing. My father had an amazing ear. He wasn't really a trained pianist, but he could sit down in the piano and improvise and and play any tune. So that was really part of our upbringing. We would get together and sing, and for any kind of family gathering or holidays, or every Sunday, whether it was hymns or just songs or children's songs or and my parents were both academics, theology and philosophy and literature. Wow. And they really wanted, I'm the youngest of 4 children, and they wanted us all to really experience our culture. So we went to plays, and we went to concerts and so on and so forth. And we all had to play some instrument. So I started with Suzuki because I think my mother had been teaching in Japan for 3 years after the war. Wow. And so she was very interested in this. I think she met Suzuki, in fact. And so she was interested in that, and that's how we started. Mm-hmm. She herself was not very musically adept, and she struggled because the concept was that, the parents had to play and learn along with their children, which is quite an interesting idea. And so I started with Suzuki, and at the age of 10 I moved to the Conservatoire, where I was then studying with Professor Gabora, and and then I met the Swarovskis soon after that, and continued with them for quite some time until I came to Vienna to study with Dora Schwarzbach and to collaborate with her for many years. Yeah, I think that what I love so much about being a musician is that the source with which I am working is so great. Mm-hmm. And these amazing works that composers have left for us, we get to really delve into them and to try to get to the heart of it. And in doing so, in this struggle and trying to reach some sort of, always to get better and to reach a kind of perfection, we get to we grow as people, in our understanding, in our empathy, and I mean, I also just like solving problems. So I enjoy the process of trying to find a different stroke or a more comfortable position, or something that really portrays can evoke those feelings that come to me in the audience. And I can spend I get lost in the details. I can spend hours and not be bored, trying to, and I can get, trying to polish and understand and get into the creative process, which would have driven the composer to write this music. And when you can join that kind of a creative process, you're renewed through that energy, I think. Mm-hmm. And it moves me. It can give me goosebumps. It can bring tears of gratitude to me, and that's really it's really a gift to be able to be so enveloped by something. One thing comes to mind right away, of course, and that is the first time that I was invited through Dora Schwarzbach to join her with Martha Argerich, Misha Maisky, Nabucco Imai, among others. And of course, I was quite young at the time, and this was a huge honor for me. And I was quite nervous. So we played our Schumann quintet the first time, and my mouth was dry, and I'm like looking around and thinking, oh my goodness, what are these great masters going to say now? And Martha said, that was nice. I think though we should do something. So we did something. And that was, at the time I thought, well, that's kind of funny, but now I really do understand it much better, because this process is so subconscious, and it's hard to put those things into words, and one really has to just abandon oneself, as Menuhin used to say, or Ivry-Gitlis like to say, to make the music yours. Whichever way you look at it, it's one side of the different side of the same coin. That can be such a, it's amazing just to jump in and to feel like connected to the music and to the musicians that you're playing with. And so I remember once also playing with Dora, I think also at the Lugano Festival, we played Dvorak Quintet. And afterwards we were sitting at the restaurant with everybody, and Dora and I were just sort of like completely empty. Everybody else, blah, blah, blah. We were just, because when you've done that, it's hard to come back. It's just, you feel kind of empty, but also really satisfied. It doesn't happen with everybody. You can't connect in the same way with everybody. It doesn't, I've had that experience with several of my also less well-known colleagues, who I really love to play with, because you kind of know that you can count on their muse and your muse being related. So you feel you can trust, you can let go, you can let it happen. And that's just, that's really gives you an incredible sense of freedom and contentedness, I would say. Well, when I was very young, I started already to perform professionally in a chamber orchestra that was led by my former professor, Madame Turovsky, and her husband, who was a fantastic cellist from the Barshai Chamber Orchestra in Moscow, and he also had the Dubinsky Trio, and a trio with Dubinsky, and yeah, so it was called I Musici de Montréal, and I started when I was about 14 years old. We made really lots and lots of recordings and performed many concerts all over, actually. And it was incredibly formative for me, because we had collaborations also with Maxim and Dmitry Shostakovich. They came to conduct and to perform. Dmitry was a pianist, and they played. We played the Shostakovich Eighth Quartet and the Piano Concerto and Piano and Trumpet Concerto, and so that was. It opened my world really to so many world-class artists. Also Berlinski, Franco Gulli, fantastic artists, and the thing that was so special about I Musici de Montréal for me was, well, Yuli Turovsky was a wonderful musician, extremely passionate, and also really, he really passed, well, they both did. They really passed on the flame, just like you see in the Olympics, passing on the flame. That they really passed that on to me and to so many of the people that they worked with. And the whole experience was so nourishing in all ways. They really encouraged me to find out about culture, to read, to go, to understand more about paintings, and they were very, very supportive. Very supportive and sharing people who, told so many anecdotes about growing up in Moscow and about the composers they had worked with, Shostakovich and Schnittke, and yeah, it was a really, really special time. I was there until I moved to Vienna, and yeah, I'm forever indebted to them. I've been so lucky to meet so many really formative personalities and inspiring musicians. Even if they're no longer here with us, like Ivergitlis, just to remember that those people is to feel their presence. So I also had the opportunity to play for Yehudi Menuhin when I was quite young, and I had such a wonderful connection to him. He was such a kind and soft-spoken, of course, brilliant musician. And when I played for him, he looked at me and he said, "Where do you come from?" And it was so funny. I was, of course, very nervous to play for him, but at that moment it went well. And then he invited me to to his festival in Gstaad. And so he's also been a very formative person for me. Amazing. I played Faust Fantasy for him, and unfortunately he wasn't in Gstaad as long as he would have liked to be, because he had some difficulties with his health. But then when I came back, and when he came, then I played for him again, and I don't. It's not so much in what he said, because he was just very encouraging and, very. It's not that he said, you have to do this or you have to do that. It was more just who he was as a person and what he represented, and the warmth with which he communicated. So of course it inspired me a lot. But it's not like he said, okay, now you have to practice more, or you have to work on your intonation. So it was more about who he was, I think. I've, also, I do remember one other professor. I think his name was Abraham Stern. And Abraham Stern apparently was the professor where, when in Moscow, when everybody was getting ready for competitions, all of the other professors would send them to Abraham Stern to get them sort of back to the live music making. And so when I played for him, Dora had brought him from Los Angeles for a master class. And when I played for him, he said, I think other people have said it as well, but he said, "Lucy, you play very good, but don't play good. Play beautiful." which is something I have to admit I have stolen and used with my students too, because we get too much involved in perfection and in trying to, we're so conscious of a certain you know high level that we see on all over in YouTube, and it's so obvious. When I was growing up, we didn't have YouTube and all of that, so it was more about really trying to find out who you are, and what moves you, and going to the different sources rather than saying, okay, what is he doing, and what is he doing, and what is he doing, or she, yeah, and really engaging with the composition more than so really. I think that people get very, very much concerned about the packaging and not so much about what's inside. And that is unfortunate. It's the times we live in, so we have to deal with it too. But we really need to think more about what it is that we're passing on, because communication is not just about honesty. The word communication means to share. Actually, but what are we sharing? Also, in our daily communications, we have to think about, it's not just about being honest, because I can be honest about a lot of things, but that's not necessarily inspiring. But if I am sharing, if I've given thought into what I'm sharing, and if I really struggle with what it's all about, I think that art in the end is extremely affirmative, and it gives courage. And as I see, my father, who's now 95, the getting old process, I mean, it's really difficult. It's difficult at every stage we encounter difficulties, but there is some kind of mystery. Our life is some kind of mystery. And the fact that we don't know what happens afterwards. We can have our beliefs or not. But in art, and my father sits there and all day he listens to music, Schubert and Mahler and Beethoven, and and these are the things that give him courage and help him to rise above the weakening of the flesh and continue to find the beauty in his life. And I know that has been for many of the musicians that I've seen get old and unfortunately die, but we all are going to get there at some point. And if there is so much beauty, then the dying process must also, I think, be of the same stuff, of the same material, of beauty. Again, I don't think I really have a philosophy. I think it's just sort of who I am, that I'm driven to get to the center of things and to the heart of things, to understand and to help as much as I can the people around me. And so it's a very individual process. Each person is different, but because I think I'm quite open and maybe empathetic, I try to. It's a very subconscious process. I mean, it's not something that I worked on or think about, but I just somehow I feel what the person needs at the moment, to help them, to whether it's to make the instrument a more integral part of their being and process, or whether it's to open their eyes to the creative process, what it means to make music, whether it's how to be less introverted, or how to overcome the what is the right word, the feeling squirmish about self-advertisement, which is something I know well about, or just the basic technical necessities, and understanding the different styles, the composers, awakening their imagination about how to inspire themselves, how to be more productive in their practicing process. So it's an extremely individual, and it's something that is awakened in the moment, I would say. And it's a privilege to work with talented young people who are wide-eyed, looking at the world and trying to develop their personal voice. So of course that spark needs to be there. It's really also about being a guide. As a more experienced person, you've seen more things. You have more resources, so you can guide them. You can say, well, listen to this piece. Listen to these compositions. Watch that movie. Read that book. Listen to this interpreter. You can guide them to the sources that might inspire them even more. You can, well, I mean, if you're working with somebody on a regular basis, well, it's kind of like raising a child. I mean, you see what they need at the moment, and you try to either give it to them yourself, or to let them know where they can get it. But it's such a pleasure to see somebody develop. It's like watching a beautiful flower blossom. I mean, it's much more than that. It's you see the process of growth and discovery. As you know, mostly I love teaching because that process is so affirmative. And mostly, I mean, I've rarely had the experience where it hasn't been like that the student and I are in a better mood than when we started out, because it's just fun. It's fun to grow, to find out. Sometimes I've had experiences where I need to challenge them a little bit more than they want to be challenged, which is sometimes difficult. But in the end, when we break down certain blockades that we all have, it's a very freeing experience. And I think that I have had really wonderful professors that I'm so indebted to. the Turovskys, who, as I said, shared so much with me of their personal experience, of their daily life, and worked with me so much for free, and also just because it was such a intense connection. And the Turovskys, and then Dora, who was just very similar kind of experience. We had so much fun in our lessons, and as I teach now, I remember things that all my professors have told me, that it's just really, it's passing on, it's a tradition, and they surely heard it from their professors, and it's it's a beautiful thing. What can I say? I think our mistakes are also what form us, and form us in. The perfection doesn't exist. So I can't say that I was really driven to work hard all the time. I work much more now than I did then. Of course, one needs to work. The competition is very high, and it's a very difficult thing that we do. But I think we also need to live. And so I don't regret all of my experiences. I think that, I'm the only classical musician in my family. My brother is a stand-up comedian and clarinetist. My two sisters also studied music, but didn't do it then professionally. And had many, many other interests. And so I was lucky to be part of such a big family. But my parents were not at all pushy. They wanted us just to become and discover and be, just also to be lazy even sometimes, and just look around and feel. And so I think that is a good thing. If it were advice to myself, probably I would have needed a little bit of a better balance between those two things, because I often felt like that I didn't want to infringe on other people's space, which, well, we have to be respectful of others, of course, but we also need to be respectful of ourselves and who we are, and really go to the, continue to have the courage to discover that.
Absolutely.
To engage fully. Really to with your whole being, do what you're doing. Don't just with your analytical part criticize what you're doing. The process of singing or of making music is such a, all cultures do it, but it's not like we need it for our to stay alive. We don't, it's not something like food or like sleep, and yet it's a basic need because it's all over. And so that's a really it's in fact many cultures use it in their medicine. So the idea that sound is also medicine, and singing together in choirs is supposed to raise your immunity.
Oh, wow.
And so I feel that the process of singing is, wow, that's really quite an amazing thing. And the voice in each one of us. But I've never really seen an unmusical child. I think the music is in us. It is a need of ours. Maybe it's a higher need than food. Although food can be wonderful, of course. But so you have to really abandon yourself to that, and feel it to be something really special and important, because it is. And I think, we can be easily not scared, but shy, over impressed by, pop culture and making money and having beautiful things and so on. But the process of becoming, it takes, 9 months, 10 months to make to form a baby, but it takes at least 80 years to become a really formed person. Well, I hope I have at least 80. But yeah, so I think that really go to the depth, go in, listen deeply, and understand that it's so important to pass these things on, because these are the gems of our culture. And I wanted to say also, I think that the process of feeling is also a very mysterious thing. What does it mean to feel? I actually thought that I could find a quick answer for that when I was teaching once, because my experience, I would say, in Italy, Italians are so outgoing, and their culture is so rich, and they should be so proud, and yet they're a little bit overawed, and they think that Italian culture has gone down, and so I was really, really funny, because I looked up, so feelings, what is the definition of feelings? And then I found out, wow, you can't find a definition to feelings. It's emotions they're so connected to all the different processes of life, and you cannot put an actual definition that encompasses all of that. So of course we have some, let's say, basic emotions, but in art we have developed, refined, subtle variations of emotions which help. Very often people don't have the vocabulary to express themselves, and so it comes out in a not very educated way. But when we have the words, or when we have, words are also something that form our feelings. Music is one of the most direct ways of forming our feelings. I think people think that feelings are just there because we're human beings, but I think that our palette of feelings develops as we grow, and develops through the different experiences that we have. And in the end, our feelings are all we have, because that's what we live with. And so if we have beautiful feelings and rich feelings and empathetic feelings and feelings that make us feel more connected to the beauty of the world, well, then we're lucky. I hope to connect to that spark, that living spark in music. I hope that it grows in me, that I feel connected to something of worth, and I hope that I can communicate that and share that with. And I won't be able to be with everybody in the audience, but with some people in the audience, there will be a feeling of being touched. I remember once I was playing actually at a it was a baptism, and the two families, the two families weren't able to communicate because one spoke French and the other spoke Italian, and so there was a kind of a silence, and there was supposed to be some kind of background music, and yet everybody was just listening instead, and it was so funny because afterwards one of the people came up to me, and he was French speaking, and he said, "Oh, today it was my birthday. Today it was Christmas. Today it was la liberté, c'est important."
Wow.
Freedom is important. And I think that, well, I do feel a sense of freedom when I can connect to music. I feel that when you can connect to music, it's like if you can become anything that is there. And doesn't happen always, but when it does happen, I think that people really respond to that. I remember another time that I was playing in Switzerland, and an old lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, you made me feel 16 again." Which was, so I all throughout, I've always had that response from many people who come, that it gives them something, and so that's precious for me.